Welcome back, everyone. Have you ever wondered if an invisible hand is pulling the strings behind every encounter in your life? Today, we're diving into a shocking story about what some might call divine intervention. Tuan and Tudim, two people from two completely different worlds, find themselves pulled into a whirlwind they can't escape. What is the invisible thread binding them together? A stunning reunion and a devastating secret are about to be revealed, changing their lives forever. Do not miss this fateful moment. What exactly is that secret? Let's find out right now. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you're the first to see how this stormy love story ends. Let's get started. The late afternoon sun stretched across the lush vegetable patches of the farm, casting a golden glow on Tuan's tall, thin frame as he hunched over, helping an elderly woman carry buckets of water. Just then, the rumble of an old pickup truck echoed from the gate. Mr. Long climbed out, brushing the dust off his worn khaki jacket. His eyes, sharp but not unkind, settled on Tuan, a stranger whose face carried an air of honesty that stood out in this poor rural area. The old woman paused her work, smiling at her close neighbor. Mr. Long didn't jump straight into small talk. Instead, he stood back and watched Tuan work. Every move Tuan made, though clearly exhausted, was careful and deliberate. It spoke more about his character than words ever could. "Who's this?" Mr. Long asked, his voice raspy from a lifetime of hard work. The old woman set down her water scoop and slowly recounted the fateful night Tuan showed up completely spent. Mr. Long listened, his brows furrowed. He didn't interrupt, only nodding, occasionally his eyes reflecting a deep sense of empathy. He looked at Tuan and didn't see the shifty eyes of a drifter, but rather the confusion of a lost bird trying to find its way back to the nest. Mr. Long walked over and gestured for Tuan to sit on the long wooden bench under the porch. "Have a seat, young man. The lady here tells me you've run into some trouble." Tuan hesitated, his hands gripped tightly together. He spoke about his fragmented memories, the accident, and the hollow feeling of having no ID or belongings. Mr. Long pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, started to light one, but then thought better of it. He stared out at the distant fields. Life is like a train ride. Sometimes we get thrown off the tracks through no fault of our own, Mr. Long said philosophically. The important thing is that you're still standing. I've seen people lose everything but losing your memory and your sense of direction like this. That's a cruel test. With a kindness hidden behind his no-nonsense exterior, Mr. Long began to map out a plan. He wasn't helping just out of pity. He believed everyone deserved a second chance. He decided he would take Tuan to the local police station to report the situation, using his local reputation to vouch for him. The next morning, on a bumpy ride in the pickup truck along a red dirt road, Mr. Long and Tuan headed toward the district center. Tuan looked out the window. The passing scenery felt both strange and familiar, stirring a nameless longing deep inside him. At the police station, Mr. Long patiently explained the situation, helping Tuan fill out the missing persons reports and complete the fingerprinting process. His calm demeanor was a rock for Tuan amidst the cold, dry administrative procedures. "Just stay calm," Mr. Long said, patting Tuan on the shoulder when he noticed his hand shaking as he signed the papers. The threads of fate brought you this far. They aren't going to abandon you halfway. Once they were finished, Mr. Long didn't take Tuan straight back to the old woman's house. Instead, he drove up a high ridge that overlooked the entire valley. Before you find your past, you need a place to recover in the present. I've got an empty room at my farm. You can stay there. Work with me. It'll help you pay back the old lady and save up a little something for when you finally find your family. When they returned, the old woman was already waiting at the gate of her stilt house. Seeing Mr. Long's kind smile and the less anxious look on Tuan's face, she knew everything was going to be okay. She pressed her thin hands together in prayer, whispering thanks to her ancestors for protecting the village's newest son. The small room at Mr. Long's farm welcomed Tuan with the scent of wood and dried hay. That night, lying on a simple but clean bed, Tuan listened to the wind whistling through the cracks in the door, feeling the warmth of human compassion surrounding him. Mr. Long's kindness wasn't just a roof over his head. It was a literal lifeline. It paved the way for Tuan toward a new horizon, one where Tudim, the woman waiting wearily at the other end of destiny, might also be feeling a glimmer of hope in her heart. The threads of fate were weaving a new chapter, no longer defined by pain or being lost, but radiant with the light of kindness. Tuan closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, he fell into a peaceful sleep, ready for the reunion that the entire universe was silently arranging. Tuan's story and Mr. Long's timely appearance serve as a reminder amidst life's storms, kindness is the lighthouse that guides us home. What do you think about this twist of fate? Will Tuan regain his memory soon and reunite with Tudim? Mr. Long's farm was more than just a workplace. It had truly become a sanctuary for the soul. Mornings there began with mist lazily draped over the hillsides and the distant clinking of cowbells. For Tuan, every morning was a ritual of rebirth. He spent hours tending to the livestock, his hands growing rougher, while his mind grew lighter than ever. Standing in the middle of green pastures that stretched to the horizon, Tuan felt a strange harmony with nature. The rustle of the wind through the leaves, the birds calling to one another, and the rich scent of damp earth after the rain. It all felt like it was soothing and healing the invisible wounds in his mind. In that newfound peace, fragments of memory began to resurface. Sometimes it was a familiar scent, other times a faint melody echoing in his head that would make him stop his work and stare blankly into space. Mr. Long often watched from a distance, never disturbing these quiet moments. He understood that memories are like butterflies. If you chase them aggressively, they'll fly away. But if you're patient and still, they'll eventually land on your shoulder. While Tuan found his peace at the farm in another world, fueled by anxiety, the police search engine was working at high speed. Portrait photos of Tuan, taken and sent by Mr. Long, began appearing on computer screens at police stations across the neighboring regions. In a small town not far away, a young officer at Mr. Thu's local station was clicking through missing persons files. Suddenly, he stopped on one photo. The eyes in the picture had a distant, melancholic, yet resilient look. It was the exact man Mr. Thu and Tudim had described in their reports for months. The email carrying that spark of hope was sent immediately. The ripple started at the police station, traveled through the city streets, and headed straight toward the house where two people were waiting wearily. The moment the phone on Mr. Thu's desk rang, the air in the room seemed to hold its breath. "Hello, District Police." "Yes, we have news. There is a man matching the description currently staying at Mr. Long's farm." Right after getting the call, Mr. Thu raced home. Tudim was sitting by the window, fiddling with her wedding ring, her eyes dark from months of sleepless nights. When she saw Mr. Thu rushing in, her heart sank. She was terrified of hearing yet another piece of disappointing news. But this time was different. "Diem, we found Tuan. Someone spotted him." Mr. Thu's shout made Tudiem's knees buckle. The tears she had held back for so long finally broke through. It wasn't just joy. It was a release from the months of guilt and agony. She scrambled to pack a few clothes, her hands shaking so hard she couldn't even work the zipper on her bag. "Where is he? Is he okay?" she asked through her sobs. They didn't wait another second. Mr. Thu's car sped off into the twilight, heading toward the remote countryside where Tuan was staying. The hundreds of miles ahead seemed to shrink under the power of love and faith. Tudim looked out the window, watching the street lights flash by like beacons of hope, leading her back to her husband. Back at the farm that evening, Tuan sat by the fire with Mr. Long. The flickering flames lit up his face, which had finally regained some healthy color. "You know, Tuan," Mr. Long said, his eyes fixed on the fire. "Do you believe that every meeting happens for a reason? I didn't help you just because I'm a good guy. I did it because I saw myself in you many years ago, lonely and lost." Tuan was moved. "Thank you, sir. If it wasn't for you and the old lady, I probably would have—" Before he could finish his sentence, a pair of headlights flooded the farmyard. The screech of brakes shattered the silence of the night. Tuan stood up abruptly, his heart pounding for no apparent reason. A jolt of electricity ran down his spine, a strangely familiar sensation washing over him. The car door swung open. Tudim stepped out, her hair wind-blown and messy. In the dim glow of the yard lights, she saw that tall, thin silhouette, the man she had been searching for with every breath. "Teach, Tuan, is that you?" The cry tore through the night. Tuan froze. That name, that voice. It struck something deep inside his dormant memories. The threads of fate were no longer silent. They were vibrating with power, weaving two lives back together into a symphony of reunion and rebirth. As the sunset stained the fields, a deep crimson, Mr. Long sat on his wooden porch bench, taking a sip of strong tea. In his mind, he was piecing together the recent events. A strange coincidence had just occurred during a phone call to his elderly mother back in their home village. "Mom, do you remember Mr. Thu from the upper neighborhood?" Mr. Long had asked casually. On the other end, his mother's voice was shaky but excited. "How could I forget Thu is a good man? Our families were so close back in the day. I heard his family is going through a hard time lately. His son-in-law, a boy named Tuan, has been missing for months." Mr. Long's teacup stopped mid-air. A jolt ran down his spine. He looked out at the yard where Tuan was quietly putting away the farming tools. Tuan, could it really be him? The world, it turned out, was much smaller than anyone imagined. The threads of destiny weren't just crossing at random. They seemed to have been spun decades ago through the kindness of previous generations, only to reappear now to protect and guide a lost man home. At the same time, the atmosphere at the district police station was just as tense. Nam, a young officer handling Tuan's file, was staring intensely at an ID photo of a man named Tuan that had just popped up from the old archives. He poured a cup of coffee, his brows furrowed in deep thought. This face, where have I seen it before? Nam wondered. He suddenly remembered his early days on the force when he was a rookie under the guidance of Mr. Thu, a man of great character and dedication. An image of Mr. Thu bringing a handsome young man to visit the old unit during an anniversary celebration flashed back like a slow-motion movie. That's it, it's Mr. Thu's son-in-law. Nam blurred out, nearly knocking over his coffee. He grabbed the phone, his hands shaking with excitement. He knew he held the key to ending a tragedy. But as a police officer, he also knew he needed absolute confirmation before giving this final shred of hope to his old mentor. A mix of professional caution and youthful energy urged him to dive straight into the night to uncover the truth. Back at the farm, Tuan began to feel seismic shifts in his own mind. His amnesia, it turned out, wasn't a solid brick wall, but more like a thick fog being slowly burned away by the sun. The local doctor, an old friend of Mr. Long's, offered an optimistic diagnosis after examining Tuan. This is just temporary amnesia caused by psychological trauma and a physical blow. Those memories aren't gone. They're just locked away to protect his brain from extreme shock. All it takes is the right trigger, a familiar image, a certain scent from his past, and the key will turn in the lock. Tuan listened to those words with a mix of hope and fear. He was afraid of what he might remember losing, yet he felt a desperate craving to know who he truly was. Lately, he found himself dreaming of a pair of sad eyes and a gentle voice calling his name through the wind. He didn't know it was Tudim yet, but his heart did. In a way, the amnesia had been a blessing in disguise. It allowed him to set aside his pain and find a peaceful sanctuary at the farm, bracing himself for the stormy reunion ahead. Everything was now like a mesmerizing jigsaw puzzle. The pieces were moving, shifting, and clicking into place with a precision that was almost eerie. Mr. Thu and Tudim were already in the car, racing through the darkness. Nam, the young officer, was also en route to the farm, and Mr. Long, fueled by that unexpected family connection, had prepared a warm dinner, as if he knew intuitively that tonight would be a night for the history books. The anticipation was reaching a fever pitch. The once silent farm thrummed with the heartbeat of hope. Every rustle of leaves, every chirp of a cricket felt like a countdown. The reunion was just a step away, a single breath. As Mr. Thu's car pulled up to the gate, its headlights piercing through the mist, the final curtain was about to rise on this mystery. Love, compassion, and the grand design of the universe were converging at a single point. One call, one hug, and memories would explode in a surge of emotion that no one could have predicted. On the narrow winding road leading to the farm, the roar of the pickup engine, driven by Mr. Thu, tore through the night. Beside him, Diem gripped the armrest, her nails digging into the leather, her eyes fixed on the beams of light sweeping across the roadside brush. "Faster, Dad, I can feel him. He's so close." Her voice cracked heavy with both terror and desperate hope, but fate seemed determined to test them until the very last second. A loud thump echoed, the truck swerved, and then it lurched to a halt. A blowout. In the middle of the silent forest, this stroke of bad luck felt like a bucket of ice water on their flickering flame of hope. Mr. Thu slammed his hand against the steering wheel, but Diem didn't wait. She flung the door open and vanished into the pitch-black night, running toward the faint glow of Mr. Long's farm in the distance. She ran as if stopping for even a second would cause the man of her life to vanish like a mirage. Back at the farm, Tuan stood alone by the stables. Suddenly, a shadow stepped out from the thicket. It wasn't Mr. Long, and it wasn't Officer Nam. It was a stranger, his hat pulled low, his eyes cold and sharp. "Tuan, you're still alive? I see you owe us something that even a lost memory can't erase." The man said, his voice dripping with malice. It turned out, Tuan's accident wasn't just a random mishap. There was a dark corner in his past, a business secret, or a deadly misunderstanding that had his old enemy still hunting him down. Tuan backed away, his hand fumbling for anything to use as a weapon. In that moment of imminent danger, a sharp pain shot through his brain. Images of a high-speed chase, the crack of a gunshot, and flashing lights flooded his mind in a dizzying rush. I don't know who you are," Tuan screamed, drenched in a cold sweat. At this exact moment, his amnesia was no longer a shield. It had become a deadly trap. Just as the stranger lunged forward, a powerful flashlight beam blinded him. "Police, freeze, hands up!" Nam's commanding voice echoed through the yard. Nam had arrived just in time, but the intruder wasn't going down without a fight. A violent struggle broke out, right there in the hay-strewn courtyard. Tuan stood there, paralyzed, watching the chaos unfold. Every impact, every shouted command acted like a hammer, striking the lock on his memory. Mr. Long rushed out of the house, shotgun in hand, flanking the intruder. As they finally pinned the man down, he managed one last defiant sneer before the handcuffs clicked shut. "You might forget me, Tuan, but you'll never forget the woman who died because of you." Those words were the detonator. A piercing pain shot straight through Tuan's brain. He clutched his head and collapsed, his scream echoing across the valley. And in the darkness of that agony, a brilliant image flickered to life to Diem's face. Not as a shadow this time, but as a living, breathing reality. Diem reached the courtyard just as Tuan hit the ground. She skidded to a halt, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The man collapsed in pain before her. He was her husband. "Tuan," she shrieked, a cry that carried the weight of 1,000 days of longing. Tuan looked up. The flashlight in Nam's hand illuminated Diem's face, drenched in sweat and tears. In that split-second time stood still. The threads of fate vibrated one last time with enough force to shatter every biological barrier. Memories came rushing back like a flood. Their wedding day, their vows on the hillside, and their very last kiss before that fateful trip. Diem. Diem. Tuan's voice trembled. For the first time in months, her name crossed his lips with total clarity. He stood up, staggering toward her. They collapsed into each other's arms in the middle of the yard, under the watchful eyes of Mr. Long, Mr. Thu, and the young officer. No words could describe the sheer redemption in that embrace. The amnesia had been a source of pain, but it had also purified their souls, allowing them to meet again as new people with a love more intense than ever before. Destiny hadn't betrayed them. It had simply led them on a brutal detour, so they would cherish this moment more than anything else in the world. But in the middle of the yard, amidst the swirling flashlight beams and the cold clink of handcuffs, the stranger maintained a mocking half-smile. Nam shoved him into the back of the pickup, but the man's eyes remained locked on Tuan, who was still shaking in Tudiem's arms. "You think catching me is the end of it?" The man spat, coughing up blood. "Why don't you ask your golden boy there where the briefcase from the West Side project is?" Mr. Long and Mr. Thu froze. Tudim felt Tuan's arms suddenly go stiff. Over the radio, Nam began to confirm the man's identity: Scarface, also known as Huyen the Stubborn, a notorious black market real estate broker. But the terrifying part was his connection to Tuan. It turns out that before he vanished, Tuan wasn't just a talented architect. He had been inadvertently sucked into a massive corporate scandal involving construction fraud and money laundering for a major conglomerate. Tuan wasn't the mastermind, but he was the one holding the sole piece of evidence, a hard drive containing the original blueprints which directly contradicted the fraudulent reports. That fateful accident wasn't a mishap. It was a targeted assassination to silence a whistleblower. Huyen the Stubborn's laughter acted like a drill, boring into the newly opened regions of Tuan's memory. He clutched his head, collapsing onto the dew-slicked grass. Diem knelt beside him in a panic, but Tuan gently pushed her away. What was he seeing? He saw a smoke-filled office. He heard the barking orders of men in expensive suits whose breath reeked of dirty money. He saw himself running through a torrential downpour, clutching a leather briefcase. Behind him were the blinding headlights, the same car that had sent him hurtling into the ravine. What did I see? Tuan muttered, his eyes bloodshot. Diem, I'm not the man you think I am. What have I done? Someone died because of me. A searing memory surfaced. A close colleague who had helped Tuan copy the data had been killed in a staged accident right before his eyes. Huyen's earlier taunt, "The woman who died because of you," actually referred to Tuan's foster sister who had drawn the killers away so he could escape into the woods that night. This revelation was like a massive weight crushing the peace they had just found. After Huyen was hauled away, a heavy, eerie silence settled over the farm. Mr. Long invited everyone inside. Under the dim glow of an oil lamp, the truth began to unravel. Officer Nam pulled out a confidential file he had been quietly tracking for months. "Mr. Tudim and Tuan, it's more complicated than we thought." Nam said, his voice dropping an octave. "Tuan didn't go missing because he got lost. He is the key witness in Case 09. The people behind Huyen are henchmen for the big boss of the construction conglomerate Tuan worked for. They've been tracking him this whole time, and his appearance here has re-triggered their hit order." Diem was stunned. She thought finding him was the end of the pain, but it was only the beginning of a new war. She looked at her husband, who now seemed so small and isolated. Tuan's amnesia, as it turned out, had been a defense mechanism to help him forget the horrific trauma of his loved ones' deaths. Mr. Long slammed his hand on the table. "This is my farm. I don't care about some big boss. I vouched for Tuan. Anyone who wants to touch him has to go through this old man first. The mountain man's fierce loyalty served as an anchor for the whole family. Tuan looked up at the group. His eyes no longer held the blank innocence of an amnesiac, but the resolve of a man who remembered his mission. I can't run forever, Dad. Diem. Tuan said, taking his wife's hand, his voice raspy but firm. That hard drive. I remember now. I didn't hide it at the construction site. I hid it somewhere no one would ever look inside the wedding gift I gave Diem just before the accident. Tudim froze. The old music box she had carried with her every single day while searching for her husband. This is the ultimate climax. Tuan and Tudim must make a life or death choice. Either they continue to run under false identities to live a quiet life together, or they step back into the light, facing the big boss and the ghosts of their past, to demand justice for those who fell. Fate didn't bring us back together just so we could live in the shadows. Tuan said, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the first light of dawn was beginning to break. We are going to end this chapter with the truth. The new chapter of their lives was no longer just about love. It was about redemption. The threads of destiny had finished weaving the story of their reunion, and now they were beginning to forge the sword of justice. My friends, the chilling secret of the hard drive and the death of Tuan's loved ones has finally been revealed. But who is the big boss pulling the strings from the shadows, and will Tuan be strong enough to face such dark forces when his memory hasn't even fully recovered? Hit like if you admire the courage of Tuan and Tudim. Subscribe right now so you don't miss the final episode, Judgment Day, where the truth comes to light and justice is served. In your opinion, could the big boss be someone familiar we've already met? Leave your theories in the comments below. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next explosive chapter.
Xin một tiền bạc ra cái nhưng cha là tiền để được tiếp thân tên cầm đầu chú như vậy người dân tên còn lại một cái là một mới chuyển đến đây chưa lâu, đi một chiếc xe để xuống huyện tỉnh, nói về bình tĩnh như mình, ánh mắt sắc sảo như dao, không biết không ai biết hắn đến từ đâu, chỉ biết mỗi khi hắn xuất hiện thì sau đó mình làm chuyện để phá nhà của có người bị đe dọa.